It's almost as if the brain is saying, I like pleasure, but you're killing me. This is too much.
There's an additional issue with pornography, which is not often discussed, which is that, remember, guys in particular.
And I know you've spoken about this in the past. You talked about going through a period of being addicted to porn.
Yes.
I wonder and it's funny because during the break you were saying that you've been married 30 years, which is incredible. At what point in your marriage did that come upon you?
Oh, well, when my wife walked out.
You know, there's no denying that porn has become more normalized these days. It used to be this taboo topic. People just didn't talk about it openly. But now, since we're not condemning it like it's some amoral habit, we can have a real, objective conversation about it. And because of that, we're finally able to take a hard look at porn use and its effects on people's lives. Now, when we're honest about this stuff, a lot of people start realizing that porn can be addictive. Some folks have even gone as far as admitting they're struggling with a full-blown addiction. And you know, if you're going to beat any addiction, the first step is just that, admitting it. So whether you're skeptical that porn can be addictive or you're fighting your own battle, here are a few psychological insights on porn addiction.
I know you've spoken about this in the past. You talked about going through a period of being addicted to porn.
Yes.
I wonder and it's funny because during the break you were saying that you've been married 30 years, which is incredible. At what point in your marriage did that come upon you?
Oh, well, when my wife walked out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was like, I'm done with you. And, you know, it was something that the porn use led to me being unfaithful years earlier.
Okay.
And what happened was, after years of hiding and not saying anything, she confronted me. She was like, what is it I don't know about you, Terry Crews? And I told her.
Wow.
And she was like, that's it, I'm out. And I was like, you know what, then go on, bye. And you know what happened? I was literally thinking, my God, you know what? It's her fault, isn't it? But you know, I realized it was me.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, I knew I had to change. And I had a friend who told me, he said, you need to get better for you, man. And I went to rehab. I was like, I need to break this. And it was something that, it was a stronghold, but I thank God I'm out of it. And I learned how to you know, you learn that you've learned a lot of wrong things. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I learned to correct them. And now my wife and I are better than ever. We're back together, super strong. And you know, it's wild because you can't keep secrets in a relationship.
Yeah, I love that.
First up, triggers. Like with any addiction, triggers are a huge roadblock on the path to recovery. When you try to avoid porn, you'll find it's not just porn websites you need to steer clear of. Movies, TV shows, and social media, they're full of subtle or not so subtle cues that can bring you right back to that habit. Even hearing a conversation about it or seeing something that reminds you of a past experience can set off those cravings. It doesn't have to be explicit to pull you back in. And unlike cigarettes or alcohol, you don't have to make any effort to get to it. Most people have a phone or computer on them at all times, so the access is instant. Breaking that cycle, it's tough.
There are good data to support the idea that if your brain learns to be aroused by watching other people have sex, it is not necessarily going to carry over to the ability to get aroused when you're one-on-one with somebody else, right? Especially young kids who are consuming a lot of pornography, the brain is learning sexual arousal to other people having sex.
So you're going to program yourself into being a voyeur?
Or just create challenges in sexual interactions with peers, with a real partner. Right?
Mary Harrington has the 3 laws of pornodynamics, and the second law of pornodynamics is the law of FAP entropy. And it says that whatever you start out wanking to will get progressively more intense over time. And I think that this is sort of speaking to that ever sort of escalating amount of the wildness that you need to watch in order to get an ever decreasing stimulus that comes back.
Yeah.
Second, sobriety is possible. With how easy it is to access porn, it can seem almost impossible to imagine a life without it. But let me tell you, sobriety is achievable. Accountability and managing those triggers are key. And yes, relapse is part of that journey. If you find yourself watching again when you know you don't want to, it's a reminder that it's not an easy road. But it's also a reminder that breaking free is possible if you keep at it. Right now, though, we don't even have a universally accepted definition for a porn addiction. Clinically, It's often called compulsive sexual behavior or problematic pornography use, but that doesn't stop professionals from researching and treating it.
And here I'm approaching this only through the lens of biology, right? I'm not a psychologist, and I'm certainly not political in any way. At least not. I have ideas about politics, but I just don't discuss them publicly. But the idea here is that I'm not saying pornography as a stimulus is bad or good. What I'm saying is in its availability and its extreme forms, it's a very potent stimulus, and very potent stimuli of any kind, extremely palatable food, extreme pornography, extreme experiences like bungee cord jumping, those set a threshold for dopamine release. And Anna will tell you that, and I'm sure she did, that the higher the dopamine peak, the bigger the drop afterwards. And it's not that you drop to baseline, you drop below baseline. So again, it's not, these things aren't good or bad, they just have to be controlled in a way, because when people are pursuing dopamine peaks over and over and over, and they aren't getting them, typically it's because they've been pursuing that activity far too often.
Third, it can affect your body too. While we're focused on the psychological, let's not forget the physical effects. People dealing with compulsive porn use may experience imbalances in brain chemicals like serotonin and norepinephrine, and these are chemicals that influence our mood. When we start relying on porn to get that feel-good boost, it can affect how we feel in other areas of life. Suddenly, things that used to bring joy just don't. Research even shows that issues like anxiety, depression, and even sexual dissatisfaction can emerge with excessive porn use. So the mental and physical sides are deeply connected here.
The brain is a fascinating machine, really.
In terms of brain plasticity, everything that we do each and every day shapes our brain.
We call it neuroplastic. Just as plastic is changeable and malleable, we can change the shape of the brain.
And I actually did a study recently on this. So we put people in the scanner and we looked at their brain structure and associated this brain structure with the amount of pornography they consume. So basically we found in our study that the gray matter in the reward center is generally smaller in those people who watch more porn.
We've seen that with multiple addictions, from methamphetamine to cocaine, others, and now with pornography addiction. It's almost as if the brain is saying, I like pleasure, but you're killing me. This is too much.
My hypothesis was that the ventral striatum and the reward regions should be bigger in those people watching pornography. And it's exactly the other way around. So,
Were you shocked?
yes.
There is solid research to show that brain functioning changes. The more you watch pornography, then you can get a blip up when the pornography is totally new. But totally new soon becomes old as you watch that.
People need to watch more or get more interesting and novel stuff to get the same level of activity in the reward system.
So it's a paradox. When it starts out, the porn is turning you on, and the more porn you watch, the less likely you are to get aroused.
Which seems to indicate that the normal, regular thing you were used to isn't sufficient anymore.
The wonderful thing about the human mind is the power of curiosity to invent, to create, but what pornography does is it puts a straitjacket on our mind to say, no, this is the only thing I'm interested in, and then ultimately that any kind of compulsion is destructive.
Fourth, porn addiction might be masking a bigger issue. For many people, addiction isn't about the substance itself. It's a way to cope with deeper underlying problems. It's reasonable to think the same can be true for porn. Maybe someone turns to it because they're feeling isolated, depressed, or stressed, and they've learned that it gives them a quick escape. But often, that's just covering up the real issues that need attention.
Here's the deal. 5 years from now, you can be who you would like to be, and you can have what you need within the bounds of reason, if you specify it. So if you could be who you would like to be, and if you could have what you think you need, in principle, what would that look like? Well, that you start to specify targets. So we say, well, write it down for 15 minutes. Don't get too self-critical. Just think, we ask questions. Who do you admire and why? And what do you think you need and why? And what would you want if you could have it? Then we have people do the reverse. Okay, now picture yourself 5 years out, and you've let your bad habits take full control, but you're 5 years older. Right.
That's
So what does that
scary.
look like?
Yeah,
Well, it should
not
be
good.
scary. Like what's the little hell your whims are aiming at?
Mm-hmm.
So what are you? You're the 35-year-old creep at the bachelor party who's still involved with pornography, who still has the mind of a 16-year-old and is getting kind of perverse around the edges because everything he watches is getting a little more brutal. Right? You're that kind of scum rat creep. That's your destiny. You want that? Think about it. Think about exactly what sort of hell you'd involve yourself in. You bloody well know where your bad habits are likely to. Some people that end up on the street. Some people that women end up as hookers. There's addiction. There's pimping. There's what? There's like brutal cynicism. There's lots of hells. You have yours. You can be sure of that, where your temptation would lead you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to think that through and decide if that's where you want to go. And then when you're tempted, you can think, oh, that's a pathway to hell. Maybe no. Right? You need both of those. That's why in the archetypal realm, the moral landscape is anchored with heaven and hell. You need something to run the hell away from.
Yeah.
Right? Because that avoidance motivation, all that negative emotion, that's really useful.
Okay.
Like anger's part of that too.
Yeah.
You want to have that
Motivate
behind
you.
you.
Yeah.
Damn right. You want your fear, you want Satan behind you,
Yes.
pushing you forward.
Okay.
Right? Exactly. Not in front of you, barring your way.
But there needs to be something to run to.
Well, that's the other thing, is that gives you incentive pleasure. And that's exactly what drugs do. That's also what pornography does. Like technically, you experience a dopaminergic release in relationship to a goal. And when all the drugs of addiction produce dopaminergic release, all the bad habits, right? You got to replace that. Well, with what? Movement towards a valid goal. Well, what's your goal?
Fifth, hypersexuality. Porn's supposed to relieve sexual urges, right? Well, that's often not how it works out. The more someone watches porn, the more it can start to take over their thoughts. And rather than keeping things healthy, it can backfire, leading to sexual dissatisfaction and dysfunction. That's because watching porn can make real-life intimacy less satisfying. And when someone becomes desensitized to what they're watching, they might start seeking out more extreme content just to get the same high they used to. Finally, let's talk about love, lust, and everything in between. Whether you believe in porn addiction or not, it can have real effects on relationships. Some people feel it's a form of infidelity, and for others, it becomes a reason for breakups. It's fair to ask yourself, is this habit getting in the way of your relationship? Are you sacrificing a connection with someone in real life for something on a screen? In the end, no one can tell you if you have a porn addiction. That's a decision you'll have to come to by looking at the facts and being honest with yourself. But there's no shame in facing it. Being open about it, that can be a game changer. So, what do you think? Are porn addictions more common than people realize? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Sci Factors for more deep dives into the mind. Good luck on your journey.